Emma Collins realized something was wrong the moment she turned onto Brookside Avenue. The quiet suburban street, normally filled with porch lights, barking dogs, and the soft hum of televisions, was now unnervingly silent. And behind her, just far enough to seem accidental, footsteps matched her pace. She stopped. The footsteps stopped. She walked again, faster. So did they, only this time, heavier, more deliberate, as if whoever was behind her wasn't trying to hide anymore. Emma's breath grew shallow, but she forced herself not to run. Running, she thought, would confirm her fear. She glanced over her shoulder just for a second and saw a silhouette under a flickering street lamp, tall, completely still, watching. Her heart slammed against her ribs. She fumbled for her phone, but the cold November air stung her fingers, making them clumsy. When she finally grabbed it, the screen stayed black. Dead battery. Perfect. She swallowed hard, reminding herself she was only 2 blocks from home. 2 blocks. She stepped forward, then another step, never looking back again. She told herself the figure was just a trick of the light, but the dread crawling up her spine insisted otherwise. Emma quickened her pace, her boots clacking against the pavement. She could feel the eyes on her, heavy, intent, patient, the kind of gaze that didn't come from curiosity, but from decision. As she reached the old oak tree by the corner, she heard it again. The footsteps, close this time, much closer than before. They weren't echoing, they were approaching. She gripped her house keys so tightly they cut into her palm. The wind blew, carrying with it a whisper soft, almost indistinguishable, but unmistakably directed at her. Keep walking. Emma froze. She hadn't imagined it. Someone was right behind her, and in less than 30 seconds, she would reach the spot where all the porch lights ended, and the street fell into total darkness, the place where she would never be seen again. Emma forced herself to move, every step feeling like it belonged to someone else. Her legs trembled as she crossed into the darker stretch of the street, where the last working street lamp buzzed weakly above her. She didn't dare turn around, not after that whisper. The cold air thickened, pressing against her chest. She could no longer hear the footsteps, which somehow terrified her more. Silence meant intention. Silence meant the person behind her was adjusting, calculating, choosing the moment. A car rolled slowly past her on the opposite side of the road, headlights sweeping across the pavement. She prayed the driver would notice her fear, notice her shaking hands, or how she hugged her bag tightly against her side. But the car continued forward, oblivious, leaving her in darkness again. Emma reached the narrow alley shortcut that led directly to her backyard. She always avoided it at night, everyone in town did. But right now, the open street behind her felt worse. Much worse. She hesitated only a second before darting inside, her boots splashing through shallow puddles. The alley smelled of damp concrete and old garbage bins. Her breath echoed around the brick walls as she hurried past a broken fence and a row of abandoned recycling tubs. The wind didn't reach this place. The air felt trapped, heavy, like someone else was breathing with her. A metallic clang erupted behind her. Emma whipped around, heart leaping into her throat. A trash can lid spun on the ground, still wobbling. Someone had kicked it, someone close. "Who's there?" she whispered, voice cracking. Silence answered. Then, another step, slow, confident, the kind of step a predator makes when the prey has nowhere left to run. Emma backed away, her hands scraping the rough brick wall to keep balance. Her mind raced through every horror story she'd ever heard, every warning her mother had given her, every instinct screaming at her to get out. She turned and sprinted toward the end of the alley, toward the small wooden gate behind her house. Just 10 more seconds of running and she'd be safe. 10 seconds. But halfway there, she felt it, a presence surging forward, closing the distance with terrifying speed. Emma reached for the gate, latch her fingers brushing the cold metal, when a shadow enveloped her from behind. Something grabbed her wrist, hard. She gasped, twisting to scream, but a gloved hand clamped over her mouth before a single sound escaped. Emma struggled, her breath trapped beneath the stranger's hand. Panic surged through her body in violent waves, her pulse hammering against her skin. She tried to twist free, but the grip on her wrist tightened, unyielding, deliberate, inhumanly strong. The voice whispered against her ear, low, deep, controlled. "Don't make this harder." The words crawled over her skin like ice. She jerked her head, trying to bite through the glove, but the stranger only tightened his hold, pulling her back into the shadows of the alley. Her keys slipped from her fingers, clattering onto the ground. That sound, small but sharp, code through the confined walls. It was the sound of hope falling away, of home slipping out of reach. The stranger shifted his grip, one arm circling round her waist, lifting her slightly off the ground. Emma kicked her, heel slamming into something solid. But instead of pain, the man let out a slow, irritated exhale, like she was nothing more than an inconvenience. "You shouldn't have run," he murmured. His voice was disturbingly calm, not angry, not rushed, as if he had done this many times before, as if tonight was already decided. Emma felt tears sting her eyes, but she fought them back, forcing herself to think. There has to be a way out. Her free hand reached toward the wall, fingers scraping brick, until she found a loose chunk of stone near the corner. With everything she had, she yanked it free and drove it backward, hitting the stranger's forearm. He grunted a quick, surprised noise, but his grip didn't break. Instead, he twisted her arm behind her back, forcing her to drop the stone. "Enough," he growled, the first crack of frustration slipping through. He began dragging her deeper into the alley, past the broken fence, past the dumpster, toward the opposite exit that led to a deserted service road behind the houses. Emma's shoes scraped the concrete as she tried to dig her heels in. It didn't slow him. He was moving with purpose now, every step steady and terrifyingly sure. She could smell something on him, cold metal, and a faint chemical scent she didn't recognize. Just as they neared the end of the alley, a motion sensor light flicked on above a garage door, flooding the path with sudden white light. For a split second, Emma saw his face as he turned away from the brightness, half hidden by a hood. Jaw clenched, eyes sharp and dead of emotion. That was the moment she realized this wasn't random. Whoever this man was, he had been watching her long before tonight. The light startled him, and his grip loosened just enough for Emma to twist her body. She tried to bolt forward, but he reacted instantly, grabbing a fistful of her jacket and yanking her backward so violently she stumbled and nearly fell. "I said don't fight," he hissed, voice no longer calm. The sudden edge in his tone sent a fresh burst of terror through her chest. He wasn't indifferent anymore. He was angry, and that meant he was losing control. Emma kicked again, aiming for his knee this time. Her heel connected, and he snarled in pain, stumbling just long enough for her to collapse onto the pavement and crawl toward the now bright garage light. But before she could scream, his hand closed around her ankle. She clawed at the ground, nails scraping concrete, as he dragged her back into the shadows. "Stop," she gasped, the word barely audible, but he didn't. He pulled her behind the dumpster, out of the reach of the motion light, where the night swallowed them whole again. "Do you know how long I've waited?" he whispered, breath brushing her cheek. The question made her stomach knot. Waited? For what? For her? The thought sent a cold, nauseating wave through her bloodstream. She tried to speak, but her throat tightened, and only a trembling exhale escaped. She didn't want him to think she knew him even if she didn't. She didn't want to trigger whatever fantasy had built itself inside his mind. Without warning, he hoisted her over his shoulder. Emma screamed, this time raw, desperate, but his hand shot up and clamped over her mouth again. "No noise," he growled. "Not here." He carried her toward the dead-end service road behind the houses, a place few people ever walked. The gravel cracked under his boots as he approached a faded, rusted van parked in the shadows. Emma's heart plummeted. This wasn't just an abduction of opportunity. This was a plan. She thrashed with every ounce of strength left, landing blows against his back. He staggered, cursing under his breath, but didn't drop her. Her breath hitched as he opened the van door with a long, slow creak that felt final. And then Emma saw it. Inside the van, illuminated by a dim battery-powered light, were ropes, duct tape, and a row of Polaroid photos clipped along a string. Photos of girls, missing girls, girls who were never seen again. And the last photo still drying was of her. Emma's breath caught in her throat as her eyes fixated on the Polaroid of herself, still glossy, still fresh, still warm from being printed. The timestamp in the corner showed it had been taken less than an hour ago. He had been close, watching, waiting for the right moment. "You see now," the man murmured, lowering her into the van. His voice carried a twisted satisfaction, like he was unveiling a gift he'd been preparing for months. "You were chosen long before tonight." Emma scrambled backward, hitting the metal interior with a loud clang. Her hands shook uncontrollably as she pressed against the far wall of the van, desperately searching for anything at all she could use as a weapon or escape tool. The man climbed in after her, blocking the only exit. His silhouette loomed large in the dim light, his shoulders almost brushing the metal frame. He reached toward the row of Polaroids and gently ran his fingers across them, as if admiring a collection. They didn't listen either, he said quietly. They all thought they could run. His tone shifted from cold to almost nostalgic. Emma felt the air leave her lungs. This man wasn't just a predator, he was ritualistic, patterned, trained by repetition. Emma forced herself to think, to breathe, to plan. Her eyes darted toward the toolbox wedged behind the passenger seat. She couldn't reach it, not yet, but she memorized its position instantly. She needed to create an opportunity. "Why me?" she whispered, surprising even herself with the steadiness of her voice. If she could keep him talking, maybe he'd move. Maybe he'd get distracted. Maybe she'd get one chance. He turned his head slowly, as if savoring her question. His hood shifted, revealing more of his face in the dim light. Strong jaw, scar near the temple, eyes that looked like they had forgotten how to be human. "Because you noticed," he said. "Most people don't." She blinked, noticed what? A smile, thin, unnatural, pulled at the corner of his mouth. "Me." Then he leaned closer, and Emma felt her pulse roar in her ears. "You looked back." He reached for her wrist again, slow, intentional, certain of her helplessness. But as his fingers brushed her skin, a distant sound sliced through the night. A dog barking, loud, close. The man froze, his head snapped toward the alley entrance. For the first time, Emma saw fear, and she knew this was her moment. The man's entire body shifted, tension rippling through him like a wire pulled too tight. Emma didn't know why the dog barking scared him, but she didn't waste a second questioning it. While his attention flicked toward the noise, she lunged for the toolbox she had spotted earlier. Her fingers brushed the cold metal just as the man whipped back toward her. "Don't," he snarled, grabbing her ankle and yanking her hard enough to slam her spine against the van floor. Pain shot through her, but adrenaline drowned it out. She kicked wildly, her boot connecting with his jaw. He grunted, more surprised than hurt, and his grip loosened again. Emma seized the toolbox handle and dragged it toward her, flipping it open with trembling hands. Tools scattered everywhere, wrenches, pliers, a small hammer. She grabbed the hammer without thinking, her sweaty fingers slipping on the handle as she swung it toward him with every ounce of fear and strength surging inside her. The man caught her wrist mid-swing. His grip tightened, crushing her hand around the hammer. His face twisted, not with pain this time, but with fury. "You're making this worse," he hissed. "You were supposed to be calm." He forced her arm downward, the hammer clattering onto the metal floor. Her heart sank as it rolled out of reach, settling near the van door. The one escape route he was blocking. Then the barking grew louder, closer. A second dog joined in, their paws pounding the pavement. The man's gaze darted toward the alley again, and this time, Emma saw real panic flicker across his features. "Not now," he whispered to himself. Emma reacted instantly. She twisted her body, slipped partially out of his grasp, and shoved her shoulder into his chest with everything she had. He wasn't expecting it. He stumbled backward, his head striking the side of the van with a dull thud. She lunged for the hammer again, but her fingers grazed on the air. The man recovered too fast. He grabbed her arm, swung her around, and slammed the van door shut behind him to muffle the dog's approach. Darkness swallowed them again. His face hovered inches from hers, breath harsh and furious. "No more interruptions," he growled. "We're leaving now." He reached for something behind him, something metallic, and Emma understood with cold, devastating clarity. This was her last chance. Emma's pulse hammered violently as she watched his hand close around the metallic object behind him. For a heartbeat, she couldn't breathe. When he pulled it into the dim light, she saw the glint of a folding knife, small, but sharp enough to end everything in seconds. "Stay still," he whispered, flipping the blade open with a soft click. He wasn't rushing now. He was focused, determined. The fear of the dogs outside had only made him more desperate, more dangerous. Emma's mind spun, searching for anything she could use, any move that might buy her even one more moment. The van rocked slightly as the dogs barked again, closer than ever. Somewhere beyond the metal walls, a person shouted for them to quiet down. A neighbor, a human voice. Hope sparked inside her, a tiny, fragile flame she refused to let die. The man grabbed her by the collar and dragged her toward the back of the van. "They won't hear you," he muttered, as if reading her thoughts. But the tremor in his hand betrayed him. He was losing control of the situation, and she needed to push him over that edge. Emma sucked in a breath and screamed that words, just pure, primal terror, loud enough to rattle the thin metal walls. The man lunged forward, trying to silence her, but his panic made him sloppy. He grabbed for her mouth, missing by inches. She kicked upward, her boot slamming into his throat. The impact made him choke and stagger backward, dropping the knife. It clattered across the van floor, sliding under a pile of tools. Emma didn't wait. She crawled toward the door, desperate fingers searching for the handle. The man roared and tackled her from behind. His weight crashed down on her, forcing the air from her lungs. She clawed blindly at the metal floor, nails breaking, skin tearing. But she kept moving, inch by inch, toward the door, toward life. Outside, the barking erupted into a frenzy. Paws scratched the dirt near the van. Someone whistled sharply. Another voice asked, "Anyone out here?" The man froze. Emma felt his body tense with a horrifying realization. He was out of time. He bolted to the opposite side of the van, grabbed her, dropped hammer, and smashed open the partition leading to the front seats. Emma didn't know how he moved so fast, only that within seconds the engine roared to life. The van lurched forward violently just as she managed to force the back door open. Emma tumbled onto the gravel, rolling through dust and broken weeds as the van sped off into the night. By the time the neighbors reached, her dogs barking, voices rising, flashlights cutting through the darkness, she was shaking, bleeding, alive. But the man who had taken her was gone, and Emma Collins, who had noticed the wrong person on the wrong night, would never be seen again. Whether she survived, vanished, or was taken again, no one ever found out.